Unless you've read all the books, you possibly haven't even heard of these rare and mythical creatures existing in the Game of Thrones universe. George R.R. Martin has been building this fantastic world for over 28 years now. While the heart of this lore lies with its dragons and the Iron Throne, there are still many mystical creatures who are rarely spoken about in this community. Sure, A Song of Ice and Fire books, or the HBO series, never really focused much on the other legendary creatures of Westeros and Essos, apart from the dragons and the Direwolves, but there are just enough scattered details about them for us to discuss in this video. Some come from Old Nan's tales, while other bits are pulled from the World of Ice and Fire encyclopedia, written from the perspective of a knowledgeable maester. Although most of these creatures would hold deep religious meaning for significant cultures, others are tied to the legendary tales from the Age of Heroes. Whether viewed with reverence or seen as part of ancient myths, many of these creatures are very real in this universe, and there's just enough mystery surrounding them to leave room for even the most unbelievable beasts on this list to possibly exist in the world of Westeros. And given how deep the lore of this world really is, it's impossible for the TV shows to replicate all of them on screen. It's said that these beasts once prowled through the depths and surfaces of the world before going extinct. So, how do they fit within the ever-expanding Westerosi lore? Without wasting another moment, let's discuss every mythical creature within the Game of Thrones bestiary. Before we get into our explanation, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Ice Dragon. It's often said that if the Ice Dragon actually existed during the time the Targaryens came to power, it could effortlessly eat Balerion the Black Dread and Vhagar for breakfast. If you've read all the books from the Game of Thrones universe, you probably know that there are numerous references to this magnificent beast in the series. Now, out of the most fascinating legends about this beast, the most credible one believes that the ice dragons roam from the Shivering Sea to the White Waste, which is the unexplored, frigid zone and cold ocean to Westeros' east and Essos' north. This is apparently a place where ships freeze upon arrival, and is also said to be the origin point of tales of mermaids who supposedly live in the depths of the Western Sea. One key thing to know about ice dragons is that they're said to be much larger than regular dragons of Valyria, thus making them even more awe-inspiring in battle. Just as dragons are the embodiment of fire, these ice dragons are believed to be the embodiment of pure, absolute cold, as they're made of living ice. These majestic creatures are said to have striking blue eyes, much like the White Walkers, and their vast wings are described to be as translucent as massive ice crystals. The breath of an ice dragon is said to be so cold that it can freeze a man instantly. Much like how conventional dragons can use their fiery breath to turn everything they want into ash, similarly, the freezing breath from these ice dragons are capable of turning everything in its path into ice. But I think one of the most intriguing aspects of these ice dragons is that when it dies, it melts, leaving behind nothing but tons of water, which means that its body can't be used by a White Walker, as it simply ceases to exist. We all know what happened to poor Viserion, and nobody wants to see that incident be repeated again. Now, for many maesters in this world, the story of the Ice Dragon is considered to be pure fantasy. However, in the world of Ice and Fire, one maester not only describes the features of this dragon, but also notes that there have been many witnesses who claim to have seen it. The book mentions that, given how sailors from 50 different nations have reported sightings over the centuries, there might actually be some truth to these tales. Grand Maester Margate even suggested that many northern legends like glacial mists, ice ships, and Cannibal Bay could probably be considered as distorted accounts of ice dragon activity. But even if the idea of an ice dragon is an interesting and elegant concept, it's still a very hypothetical claim, as nobody's really managed to find any solid evidence that would prove their existence, especially since it's believed that they melt when killed. Although, if you dig deeper into the limited information available on these rare form of dragons, you'll notice that there are multiple accounts from different people in Westeros who claim to have seen these icy beasts. Unlike the story of the Long Night, which has been passed down through generations, these sightings seem to be a phenomenon that occurred in a specific area. Many have reported seeing these creatures, but no one's been able to study why they melt when they die. While some maesters remain stuck on the fact that the tales of the Ice Dragon is nothing but a fantasy, there are a few of them who acknowledge that the sheer number of testimonies might suggest that there's some truth to it. Now, there's a popular theory that the Night King might be a creation of the Heart of Winter, with Game of Thrones representing a struggle between life and death, the Lord of Light and the Lord of Eternal Winter, fire and ice. In this eternal battle, dragons, White Walkers, and men are like pawns or soldiers, fighting a war that could have been going on for thousands of years. Some people also believe that the Night King was created in response to Azor Ahai, the champion of the Lord of Light, making the Ice Dragon a magical counter to the Fire Dragons. Although George R.R. Martin has never fully explained the nature of the gods in this universe, it's likely that these entities are positive or negative forces that have been at odds for a long time. While most of these theories sound a bit lame to my taste, there's one particular idea I can get behind, which states that the ice wall of the north was created using the freezing breath of the ice dragons, and perhaps that's the reason why it's so big, as these magical creatures helped to create it. The Sea Dragon. Apparently, sea dragons were once common in the waters of the known world, but over time they faded into a legend, as nobody has seen one in ages. Sea dragons are said to be similar to land dragons, but without wings, as they live primarily in the ocean. They're described as massive reptiles who freely roamed in the seas of the known world. Though it's been thousands of years since the last sea dragon was sighted, many people in the Iron Islands still believe these mighty creatures roam the deepest parts of the oceans, away from prying eyes. Even though they've not had nearly as much impact on the history of Westeros, sea dragons might be even more mythical than regular dragons. According to the Citadel, there haven't been any sightings of sea dragons in a whole millennia, which is why some maesters doubt if they ever existed in the first place, while others think they might still be lurking deep in the Sunset Sea, far from human drama. There are a few references to sea dragons in Westeros, like the Sea Dragon Tower at Dragonstone, which is shaped like a dragon, and the Sea Dragon Point, a large peninsula in the north. However, one sea dragon, Nagar, holds a special place in Ironborn history. So, according to Ironborn legends and religious beliefs, the first and most powerful of all the sea dragons, Nagar was a fearsome sea dragon of unmatched power, lurking in the unfathomable depths of the ocean. It was said to be so massive and fierce that it could easily devour whales, krakens, and leviathans. The story goes that the Grey King, the first legendary ruler of the Iron Islands, was aided by the drowned god, their deity, in his battle against Nagar on the shores of what's now known as Old Wick. In the end, the Grey King defeated the Sea Dragon and built his grand hall from Nagar's remains. The Grey King used her bones to form the pillars and beams of his grand hall. Meanwhile, her jaws became his throne, and her teeth were used to craft his crown. The Ironborn also believe that the Grey King harnessed the living fire within Nagar's body to keep his halls warm, but after his death, the storm god extinguished that fire, and the sea washed away the throne with only the pillars and beams of Nagar's skeleton remaining. The Grey King is also said to have taken a mermaid as his queen, in order to ensure that his descendants could thrive both on the surface of the land and in the depths of the ocean. However, maesters are skeptical of this tale, considering it nothing more than a bedtime story told to children in Westeros. In fact, they doubt that Nagar the Sea Dragon ever really existed. The Krakens. While we haven't directly seen any Krakens in A Song of Ice and Fire, and people rarely believe them to exist, the text still strongly suggests that Krakens are real in the world of Planetos, and will probably play a significant role in the Winds of Winter. Krakens in Planetos are very similar to those from real-world mythology that describes them as giant squids capable of dragging massive ships underwater and feasting on dying sailors. The Kraken is famously featured on the coat of arms of House Greyjoy and are labelled as legendary but enormous cephalopods, said to have once haunted the world's oceans. While most people in Westeros believe they went extinct long ago, sailors still claim to see them lurking in the deep. Much like mermaids, Krakens were once common in the waters around Westeros, but have somehow vanished since then. Why they disappeared remains a mystery, and since no one alive today has likely seen one, these sea beasts have taken on a legendary status in the minds of most. It's said that human blood attracts Krakens, and once they arrive, these monstrous creatures indiscriminately tear through everything in their path. They're especially common in the Summer Sea, south of Dawn, and to a lesser extent in the northern part of the Sunset Sea. There are plenty of accounts and depictions of Krakens throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, many of which come directly from House Greyjoy, as Krakens are a key part of their mythology. In A Storm of Swords, Varys mentions in a small council meeting that an Ibbenese whaling ship was reportedly sunk by a Kraken off the Fingers to the east of the Vale, but Tywin Lannister dismisses the claim. Given the vast and mysterious nature of the world in Game of Thrones, it's easy to imagine that such terrifying creatures might either be lurking in the deep waters or are simply extinct. The Leviathans. Leviathans are enormous, supermassive whales that have appeared a few times throughout the Westerosi lore. Unlike the grey whales, humpback whales, spotted whales, and white whales that we see, Leviathans are much larger and have much longer lifespans. These behemoths are said to be the largest creatures in their world, possibly even bigger than dragons, with some Leviathans supposedly being as big as a small island. They mostly inhabit the Sunset Sea, the Shivering Sea, and the Lorath Bay to the north. Though we've not directly seen any Leviathans in the main books, there are various accounts of them, particularly from the Ibbenese, who were famous for hunting down Leviathans during their whaling expeditions and used their blubber and oil as a source of trade, which are crucial to their economy and have made them quite wealthy. Even though we know very little about these creatures, it's still reasonable to speculate that they might be similar to dragons in their ability to grow, as long as they're not being contained, thus allowing them to possibly have a form of quasi-biological immortality. But the different descriptions of regular Leviathans and grey Leviathans suggest there might be at least two distinct species of these massive whales. Whatever it is, despite their immense size and awe-inspiring presence, Leviathans are still rare, if not mythical.
Riding their dead horses, hunting with their packs of pale spiders, big as hounds.
The ice spiders. As if the White Walkers were not already terrifying enough, their frightening appearance is made even more chilling by their mounts, the giant ice spiders. Now, it's uncertain whether the ice spiders are real or just legends, but in case they do exist, we know so little about them that they could pose a serious threat. There's always been an ongoing debate about whether these spiders are naturally occurring creatures from the far northern ice-filled frozen wastes, or if they're magical constructs made of living ice, like the ice dragon. Given that they're said to be bloodthirsty, the idea that they are indeed real living creatures seems more plausible. If you remember, Old Nan mentions these monstrous arachnids when she tells Bran Stark about the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, when they first came to Westeros during the Long Night, thousands of years ago. According to her stories, the White Walkers raised the dead as wights in order to kill the living. They rode on undead horses and hunted with packs of giant ice spiders as big as hounds. Similarly, in A Song of Ice and Fire novels, there are a few mentions of giant ice spiders used by the others to hunt their prey. Here, Old Nan tells Bran about how the others chased the last hero during the Long Night with packs of these huge pale spiders that were as big as hounds. Later, when Sam is reflecting on the retreat from the fight at the Fist, he recalls frightening tales from his childhood about the others riding giant ice spiders. Even in the fourth novel and its parallel chapter in the fifth book, Sam shares with Jon that some old records mention these giant ice spiders, though he's unsure of their exact nature or purpose. The world of Ice and Fire touches on the mystery as well, because the maester who wrote the book admits that no one really knows what ice spiders look like or if they even exist. But the book included an illustration of a White Walker riding a giant ice spider who looked like an oversized pure white tarantula, although this should probably be viewed as an artist's interpretation rather than an accurate depiction. The unicorn. Unicorns are, apparently, very real in this world, but they aren't nearly close to the elegant one-horned horses you might be familiar with. Instead, the unicorns of Westeros are large, shaggy creatures that look more like goats with a single long horn on their heads. Historically, they've been used as mounts by those living near their habitats, like the hairy men of Essos or the people on the island of Skargos near Westeros, who once rode super shaggy unicorns into battle. While they were super common in the ancient days of the known world, unicorns have now become a rare sight in the realm and are only known to live in a few places. But the books provide more recent evidence in the case of a wildling who once offered a helmet made from a unicorn skull while passing south of the Wall. In the books, when Jon Snow walks into his direwolf ghost, he witnesses Shaggy Dog, Rickon Stark's direwolf, killing a unicorn. Some noble houses in Westeros even use the unicorn as their symbol, but these creatures are recently claimed to be found in the higher mountains of Ib. It's said that they're built like large mountain goats, but only sure-footed unicorns are capable of climbing steep hills or mountains. The Basilisk. The basilisks in Game of Thrones are not like the deadly snake-like creatures from the Harry Potter series. Though they do share some similarities, these basilisks are more common in the wild and have various uses. While their exact appearance is still a mystery, it's rather clear through the text that the common people have found many practical uses for them. Basilisks in this world are most infamous for their deadly blood, which is highly poisonous. Apparently, the Faceless Men mix basilisk blood into a paste that, when consumed, can drive a person into a murderous frenzy. It's said that with just a little taste of basilisk blood, a mouse will go mad enough to fight a lion. In A Song of Ice and Fire novels, basilisks are described as venomous reptiles, roughly the size of a dog, that inhabit the jungles of Yi Ti, located far southeast of the Dothraki Sea, beyond the Bone Mountains. They may also be found on the tropical Basilisk Isles off the northern coast of Sothorios, as well as on the islands of the Jade Sea, where other dangerous creatures like the poisonous Manticores live. In other regions across Essos, basilisks are popularly used in brutal animal fights, usually being imported from Yi Ti to be cruelly pitted against dogs for entertainment and gambling. Even though they're fatally dangerous, basilisks are primarily seen as tools for humans to exploit. In the books, Daenerys witnessed a basilisk tearing apart a dog in a fighting pit during her visit to Qarth, indicating their widespread use in such brutal spectacles, including those in Slaver's Bay. But like I said, the exact appearance of a basilisk remains somewhat of a mystery in the books. Based on their size and venomous nature, they might resemble creatures like Komodo dragons, while being smaller than the lizard lions of Westeros. Some speculate that they could be more snake-like, in line with traditional mythological depictions of basilisks. However, we can't really be sure about it, as their true form is left largely to the imagination. The Manticore. Manticores are one of the rare mythical creatures that we've actually seen in Game of Thrones, alongside dragons and direwolves. Unlike the Manticores of Earth's mythology, which are said to be a mix of a lion, bat, and a human face, the Manticores in Westeros are deadly insects who rather give off a scorpion vibe. These creatures are supposedly found in Essos, living on the jungle-covered islands of the Jade Sea, far to the east beyond Qarth. In Season 3 of the original show, we saw one of these scorpion-like manticores when an agent of the Warlocks of Qarth tried to use it to assassinate Daenerys Targaryen. Thankfully, Sir Barristan Selmy came through just in time to save her. Manticores also played a part in Oberyn Martell's tragic end, as he coated his spear in manticore venom during his duel with the Mountain. Though Oberyn ultimately lost the fight, the venom did its job, leading to the Mountain's eventual, albeit delayed, death. Nonetheless, manticores are pretty scary creatures, with a jewel-like shell and a rather disturbing, almost human-like face. Physically, they look a lot like scorpions, but can grow to nearly the size of a lobster. They have about 6 legs and a large curved stinger tail that arches over their body and head. Their bodies are lined with sharp spines, and they have a mostly green color with an iridescent shine. Manticores can be easily recognizable through the distinctive markings on their bodies, especially by the final plate of their tail, which has a pattern that looks like a human face. This eerie feature has earned them the nickname Death's Head Manticore. They make a hissing sound and have the ability to fold themselves up like a scarab. Their sting is also highly poisonous. It's said that the manticore venom is so lethal, it kills a person instantly once it reaches the heart. These dangerous creatures are traded all across Essos, often found in market stalls at places like Vaes Dothrak or in the menagerie of the Sea Lord's Palace in Braavos. While manticores are very real in Essos, people in Westeros sometimes dismiss them as just another myth, as they can't be procured very easily and are only sought out by assassins and alchemists worldwide. The city of Mantaris, located between the Free Cities and Slaver's Bay, is especially known for producing manticore venom. The Little Valan. If you're a fan of lemurs, you'll be happy to know that they actually exist in the world of Game of Thrones. These charming creatures can be found in some of the most exotic places, like the Summer Isles and the distant southern continent of Sothorios. There's even a special breed within the species who were called the Little Valan, specifically named after the people of ancient Valyria due to their distinctive features. The Little Valan is found in the forest of Qohor and is famous for its striking silver-white fur and large purple eyes. While these sweet creatures are a rare sight in the realm, they don't really play a major role in the story. But Little Valan surely add to the richness of this world by showing that it's full of intriguing details, even if they don't directly affect the plot. In the books, Daenerys hoped to see one of these little guys during her travels with the Khalasar in the forest of Qohor. Unfortunately, all the lemurs fled at the approach of the Khalasar, and she couldn't catch a glimpse of them. One of these lemurs was also preserved and displayed at the Citadel, where it's been patted so many times for good luck that its fur has worn off. The Sphinx. In the history of Westeros, a sphinx is a completely mythical creature that combines different animal features, like a human face, a lion's body, and an eagle's wings. In stories, sphinxes are known for speaking in riddles, with other tall tales of dragons trying to outwit them. At the Citadel, the gates are guarded by 2 imposing stone statues of green sphinxes with onyx eyes. They have lion bodies, eagle wings, and serpent tails. One sphinx has a man's face, while the other has a woman's. The Valyrians apparently had their own version of sphinxes, but instead of lion bodies, theirs had dragon bodies. You can still find statues of these Valyrian sphinxes scattered across Essos as relics from before the doom of Valyria, even in the Red Keep. The entrance to the small council chambers is flanked by 2 of these Valyrian sphinx statues. In the books, Euron Greyjoy has amassed a remarkable collection of treasures during his voyages, including some ancient Valyrian sphinxes. In real life, the term sphinx originally comes from ancient Greek mythology, where it describes a creature with a lion's body, raptor's wings, and the head and breasts of a woman. The term was also used for similar creatures in ancient Egyptian art, which had the body of a lion and the head of a human, ram, or raptor, but typically lacked wings. Basically, nobody really knows what a sphinx can look like, so at this point, there's a possible mixture of all animals in the sphinx's anatomy. The shadow cats. Shadow cats are impressive predators with thick black fur and white stripes, sized somewhere between tigers and mountain lions. Their claws are incredibly sharp and strong, with just one swipe being more than enough to fully disembowel a man. They also have curved front teeth and a long lashing tail. It is said that at night, their eyes seem to glow while they make deep rumbling growls and fierce screams. These animals are known for their stealth and agility, as shadow cats are skilled hunters that can detect blood from up to 6 miles away. But they are relentless when it comes to eating, consuming every bit of meat from their prey and even cracking bones to get to the marrow. Although they mostly scavenge and hunt silently, they generally avoid attacking living humans unless they're starving. A shadow cat's fur is called shadow skin, and is highly prized for making warm and thick cloaks. It's said that shadow cats are native to northern Westeros, thriving in the sparsely populated forests beyond the Wall. But they don't just stay up north. They're also found in wild mountainous regions further south, with notable populations in the rugged mountains of the Moon in the Vale of Arryn. Apparently, travelers heading east across these mountains into the Vale are often threatened with the danger of encountering these powerful predators. Now, in A Song of Ice and Fire novels, lions once roamed much of Westeros, especially the hills of the Westerlands, but they were hunted nearly to extinction over the centuries. It's noted in the books that large animals like direwolves and lions have been driven out of most of Westeros due to human expansion. This suggests that shadow cats, while sizable, are not as large as the lions that once lived there. Still, they're not as rare as direwolves, because there have been many shadow cat sightings in the books by some of our favorite characters. The mermaids. Mermaids and merlings are legendary creatures said to inhabit the seas. They have the upper body of a human and the tail of a fish. According to legend, the Grey King of the Iron Islands married a mermaid, which made him ruler of the Western Isles and the seas beyond. Ironborn believe that in the drowned god's watery halls, mermaids cater to his every need. Priests of the drowned god even claim that the Ironborn are more closely related to fish and merlings than to other humans. It's also believed that mermaids serve the souls of Ironborn who drown at sea by guiding them to the watery halls of the drowned god. But in A Song of Ice and Fire novels, mermaids are considered nothing more than mythical creatures. Tales of them often come from drunk and horny sailors who have spent too much time at sea and mistake sea cows or other marine animals for these gorgeous beings. The mermaids of the Shivering Sea are said to have pale skin, black scaled tails, and are considered to be much more dangerous than other southern counterparts. Some stories even depict that Elenay, the mythical wife of Doran Godsgrief, was a mermaid before she became mortal. To top that off, the Winged Knight is rumoured to have been friends with the Merlings, while the legend of Owen Oakenshield tells of him driving these creatures back into the sea. However, Maester Theron suggests that the Deep Ones might be the true origin of Merling stories. There's even a legend that the Maze Makers of Lorath were wiped out by a sea-dwelling enemy, who can possibly be Merlings. If you remember, when Jorah Mormont mentioned that some captured wildlings claim to have seen the White Walkers, Tyrion Lannister dismissed this, joking that there are sailors in Lannisport who also claim to have seen mermaids. The Merling King is also worshipped as a god, with a statue of him in the House of Black and White in Bravos. It's said that Merlings honor their lord by blowing into seashells. Lastly, Ursula Upcliff called herself the bride of the Merling King, and according to the House Velaryon legends, their driftwood throne was actually a gift from the Merling King to seal a pact. Deep Ones. The Deep Ones are said to be an ancient race of humanoid creatures who are believed to have lived during the Dawn Age. While they are very intelligent, the Deep Ones are described as dark and sinister beasts. These beings were thought to be a mix of man and fish, dwelling in the depths of the oceans, but occasionally venturing into coastal waters to trouble the humans living there. As the Deep Ones are most often linked to the myths and legends of the Iron Islands, it's unclear whether they truly existed. Similar tales of such beings can be found throughout the known world, which suggests they might have been real, but any concrete knowledge about them is apparently lost in the mists of time. Although there are some maesters who speculate that the Deep Ones may have lived on the Iron Islands before the arrival of the original Ironborn, who are believed to be a branch of the First Men. There's also a theory that they might be connected to the mysteriously fused black stone ruins found at the base of the High Tower in Old Town, though this idea is not widely accepted, and rather remains on the fringes of scholarly thought. In his manuscript, The Strange Stone, Maester Theron introduces the idea of the Deep Ones as a mysterious race that he describes as queer, misshapen half-men, born from the union of sea creatures and human women. Theron also speculates that the black stone of the Seastone Chair and the ancient fortress beneath the High Tower were both crafted by these Deep Ones. He also suggested that it was actually the Deep Ones who might have inspired the legends of Merlings, and even the religion of the drowned god. The lore of Lorath speaks of the maze makers being wiped out by sea creatures, while the people of the Thousand Islands are known to sacrifice sailors to fish-headed gods, whose stone idols rise from the waters at low tide. Theron hints that all these stories and beliefs could be ultimately connected to the legend of the Deep Ones. But still, nobody has really seen these guys, as they're only ever heard in legends and stories. The Old Men of the River. One of the more surprising creatures in A Song of Ice and Fire books are the giant turtles with massive horned shells, known as the Old Men of the River. These massive turtles sometimes grow larger than boats and live in the River Rhoyne in Essos, which is the largest river in the known world. Long ago, during ancient times, the Rhoynar civilization, which thrived along the Rhoyne, revered these turtles as sacred beings, believing them to be the consorts of their chief goddess, Mother Rhoyne, who embodies the river itself. History tells us that the first clash between the Valyrians and the Rhoynar began when the Valyrians killed one of these revered turtles. This sparked the First Turtle War and set the stage for the devastating conflicts that would later lead to the Rhoynar's downfall at the hands of the Dragon Lords. These river turtles are described as being enormously larger when compared to regular turtles than a direwolf is when compared to a common wolf. But despite their impressive size, they're rarely seen. They are likely few remaining in number and tend to stay submerged, which makes encounters with them quite rare. Nonetheless, the good news is, even after the Rhoynar's downfall, the Old Men of the River can still be found in the Rhoyne today. In the novels, when Tyrion Lannister travels from Pentos to Volantis, he takes a riverboat down the Rhoyne. But in the TV series, this journey is condensed into a land trip on a horse-drawn wagon. Anyways, while passing the ruins of the Rhoynar city Nyssar, Tyrion briefly spotted one of these giant turtles surfacing near his boat. One of his companions even claims it was the original godlike creature from which all other giant turtles got their names. Tyrion estimated that the turtle was as big as the Shy Maid, his boat, which is a sizable one-mast vessel with 3 cabins. This suggests that the Old Men of the River can grow to be as large as adult elephants, if not even bigger. The Fireworms. Fireworms are one of the most horrific creatures in the Game of Thrones universe. These colossal fire-breathing monsters hail below the 14 Flames, which is the chain of volcanic regions where Old Valyria was built long before dragons appeared. Fireworms are known to dig deep into the earth and can apparently endure the intense heat of these volcanoes themselves. They can easily burrow through rock, soil, and stone with ease. Historical accounts tell us about ancient miners and slaves in Valyria who often came across these fearsome beasts, but didn't survive to talk about their encounter. Although no fireworms have appeared in the Game of Thrones novels, there's a reason to believe they might still be around. One of Balerion's final flights took him back to Valyria, where he ended up being devastatingly injured by something. Given that Balerion was the largest dragon ever, alongside being a seasoned warrior with a history of battles, whatever managed to hurt him must have been incredibly massive and fierce. Fireworms, or perhaps another dragon, are probably the only creatures native to Valyria that could pose such a threat. These legendary creatures can breathe fire but lack wings, and are also said to be related to dragons. While their young counterparts are small and about the size of a child's arm, these creatures actually grow into enormous sizes as they age. Fireworms have no affection for humans, and those who come into contact with these creatures were frequently found burned and blackened, with the minds showing signs of damage like cracked or pitted rocks. The Wyverns. Wyverns are believed to be related to the great dragons that once roamed ancient Valyria. Unlike dragons, however, wyverns are a reptile species only found in the southern continent of Sothorios, and are known for being even more aggressive than your conventional dragons. Although they're smaller and can't breathe fire, wyverns are still fierce hunters that attack in packs, going after almost anything for food. They have large leathery wings, sharp beaks, and a relentless appetite. Even if they are smaller than dragons, wyverns are even more ferocious, earning them the title of being the tyrants of the southern skies. And their fearsome presence is one of the reasons why there are barely any human beings living in Sothorios. Apparently, there are several types of wyverns, each with its own unique traits. Brindled wyverns have green and white scales and can grow up to 30 feet long. Swamp wyverns might be even larger, but they're usually sluggish and often stick close to their lairs. Brown bellies are small and are only about the size of monkeys, but they hunt in packs of 100 or more, which makes them more dangerous than the larger wyverns. But it's the shadow-winged wyvern that's the most feared type, as it's nocturnal, with pitch-black scales and wings that render it nearly invisible in the dark. Septon Barth wrote about wyverns in his book Dragons, Worms and Wyverns, Their Unnatural History, where he speculated that the blood mages of ancient Valyria might have used wyverns to create the first dragons. And if that's true, wyverns could be the ancestors of dragons, so as long as wyverns still exist, there might be a chance to bring dragons back to life. In 56 AC, a report reached King Jaehaerys I Targaryen's small council claiming that a dragon was being shown off in the fighting pits of Astapor in Slaver's Bay. This happened around the time King Jaehaerys was searching for Balerion, who had gone missing with Aeria Targaryen 2 years earlier. However, Barth dismissed the report, saying it was almost certainly a wyvern that had been mistaken for a dragon by people who had never seen a real dragon before. So, that brings us to the very end of our list of rare creatures and mythical beasts that exist in the world of Westeros. Apart from the Manticore in this list, none of these hauntingly beautiful creatures have been seen in the TV shows yet, and I really think that's kinda sad. The least they could do was give us a giant ice spider during the White Walker confrontation, but alas. Anyways, I hope we get to see a few of these creatures in the future TV shows, be it in House of the Dragon or any of the upcoming new ones. With that being said, let me know if I missed out on any rare majestic creature from the lore, and do tell me your favourite mythical beast from this list in the comment box below.